Is he the classic definition of a lone wolf?
He's a classic definition in the sense of an individual working alone, as so far that's what we believe. But there is no single type of lone wolf. I mean, the lone wolf could also be two brothers, such as we saw in Boston with the Boston Marathon bombing, the husband and wife in San Bernardino, and the mass shooting. It's basically the individual working alone or perhaps with one other person, but they're not part of an organized cell. They're not getting all the instructions from an organized group. They're not getting supplied with weapons, and it's not usually a large-scale coordinated attack. And most of the time, the lone wolves are free to think up any scenario they want and act upon it because there's no group decision-making process to say, well, this may not work. And that's why we're finding this diversity in the types of lone wolves and their attacks.
Jeffrey, it sounds to me like you just described every single school shooting over the last 20 years. Is it the same mental makeup, the same mentality?
Well, in a certain way. Usually the school shootings are not put in the classification of terrorism because a lot of times it's not a political motive. But sometimes, you see the effect is the same. There's a number of what I call these idiosyncratic lone wolves who do have these personal problems in their lives, or they have emotional and mental issues, and they latch onto these ideologies and attack. So in that sense, the school shootings and a lot of these terrorist attacks can be similar in terms of some of the makeup of the various different lone wolves.
Right, but if it's just the mental makeup, and whether a Dylan Klebold and whoever else pick your lone wolf, school shooter who has sort of lived in this fantasy world and sort of made up this alternate universe. Sounds to me like that's very similar to what some of these quote-unquote traditional lone wolf terrorists do, where they sort of make up their own world and sort of act on it because of that.
Yeah, and exactly, and ISIS has taken advantage of that. ISIS has used social media and the Internet to make this call for individuals anywhere to take action against the government, particularly, in the West, whether it be knife attacks, as we've seen in Minneapolis, or IEDs in New York. And basically, they are able to target all these individuals. It's like spam email. You send out millions of these messages. You only need a few to take the bait. So in terms of those with certain personality issues or mental issues who are then going to latch onto these messages and these ideologies, you could have the making of a lone wolf. But there are also lone wolves who are very dedicated to their political cause, and just like these terrorist groups, and we have to try to understand how we can combat that also.
How does normal functioning society go about stopping these lone wolves? And is it a false sense of security to think we even can, and just we have to come to the conclusion that we are going to have these one-off terrorist attacks every few months?
Yeah, we have to, because that's been our history and every country's history. There's always been terrorism. Even when there's lulls in attacks and policymakers and politicians say, well, we've won the war against terrorism or we turned the corner, one event occurs and we're back to square one. You just can't protect everything everywhere. And even if you had a Fortress America, the lone wolf would still be able to fly under the radar. But you still have to live your life. Everybody's chance of being a victim of a lone wolf or any type of terrorist attack is very slim, but we still have to try to use all our resources, whether it be technology, good old-fashioned police work, public awareness, to try to reduce the probability of these attacks. But it'd be foolish and naive to think we're going to eliminate it all the time. We just can't.
Jeffrey Simon, one last question for you here. Author of Lone Wolf Terrorism, Understand the Growing Threat. We're hearing that ISIS is having a hard time recruiting fighters now, and that the steady stream of lone wolves joining ISIS has fallen to a trickle, and in many instances, they can't find enough bodies now.
Exactly, but the thing is that there are two types of lone wolves that ISIS uses. Those who come over and become the foreign fighters and then go back to their homelands and start to commit terrorist attacks. That is starting to diminish, and it may almost be eliminated as ISIS loses their territory in Syria and Iraq. But they're morphing into this decentralized organization that can still use the Internet, still use certain videotapes to make the call for individuals to stay in their home country and take action right where they are. And that's the power of social media and the power of the Internet.
Jeffrey Simon, author of Lone Wolf Terrorism, Understanding the Growing Threat. Jeffrey, thanks for checking in.
Thank you.
725.